Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, with the looming threat of Elon Musk maybe donating $100 million to Reform UK, a lot of people are saying that the Labour government should tighten up the law to prevent this tsunami of foreign money entering our politics. But Labour is saying they don't want to act too quickly for fear of it backfiring. But what exactly do they mean? And are they making informed decisions where Reform UK are concerned? Or are they just acting out of either fear or overconfidence? But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, Labour promised to crack down on foreign money and interference in politics in the manifesto. The Conservatives passed laws in the last Parliament, but they deliberately left gaping loopholes in order that they could take advantage of them, not really feeling that their opponents could do as well. But, I mean, there was no promise to do this immediately in the manifesto, just at some point this Parliament, in other words, in time for the next general election. Now, I'd say when you've got a weakness in your democracy, you probably should be prioritising the fix. But I also understood why Labour were not doing that. The legislation they've been prioritising is what needed to be done first, because it was going to take a few years for the benefits to be noticed. And those benefits have to be noticed before the next election. Like, if you put in place something where the benefits are going to be after the election, what happens is all the costs are loaded up, so you're unpopular, as we've seen. You don't get the benefits for the election, so you lose it. And then your opponents come in and then they get the benefits from your long-term plans, and then they win the next election as well. So, yeah. Whereas legislation to strengthen democracy, I mean, that can take effect as soon as the laws are passed. The problem is that there's now an imminent threat. There are rumours that Elon Musk might donate $100 million to Reform UK, possibly just to annoy Keir Starmer. Now, the problem here is it's not just that this would represent foreign money in our elections. That's been happening for a long time. It's the sheer scale of it. We don't see this sort of money being donated in the UK. Like during the last Parliament, Frank Hester, you know, the guy who said he wanted to shoot Diane Abbott, right? He donated £15 million to the Conservative Party. This was absolutely massive. I think it may have been the largest amount presented to any political party by a single donor that I can remember. It's huge. Well, Musk is hinting that he's going to donate more than 5 times that sum to Reform UK. This is more money than all the political parties spent on the general election put together. It's an enormous amount of money. And we know that money influences elections, otherwise political parties would not go to such extreme lengths to raise it. I mean, policies are definitely shaped by all parties in order to, well, partly in order to elicit donations. So action is needed, and Labour are still saying they're going to tighten up the law, and we even know some of the specifics they're thinking about, but they won't rush into it. Now, according to the Observer today, there are a couple of reasons for this, which I'm not really convinced about. The first is they don't want to make quick decisions and get it wrong. Now, okay, sometimes this is a genuine concern. You act your knee-jerk reaction, then you end up creating more problems as well. But I don't see that here. This is too much money to ignore. Also, I see no reason. Like, if you're trying to say, okay, well, this source of foreign money is okay and this one isn't, that's probably where your problem is. I see no reason to allow any foreign money into direct political campaigning. Like, ban all foreign businesses, even if they've got British outlets. Just ban all foreign-owned businesses from donating to political parties, as well as non-UK citizens. Easy, done, finished. You can work on the legislation for political campaigning in general later on, but ban donations to political parties from any foreign business or non-UK citizen above a certain amount. I mean, like 500 quid here or there. Okay. You know, you could even ban businesses or people who are UK citizens or British businesses, but they're registered offshore for tax purposes. Just say, well, you want to be foreign, you can be foreign. And put a legal duty on political parties to check the source of their donations, something that has already been suggested anyway. So then there's the second concern, that it could backfire. And how does that? Oh, well, you know, Reform UK might claim that they're being sabotaged by the establishment. They do that anyway. And they will continue to do that if Musk donates to them. See, at the moment, right, look at the situation. Reform UK Yes, sometimes Nigel Farage has faced an interview where he's been put under a bit of scrutiny and he's fallen to pieces every time. But mostly, he's getting an uncritical platform on the mainstream media. So Nigel Farage is Reform UK as a whole, actually, are getting the best out of the mainstream media, broadcast media, newspapers, right? They are getting the most uncritical platform of any party, including the Conservatives at the moment. Then there's social media. Now, on YouTube alone, Nigel Farage, if you look at his channel, he gets views. Keir Starmer has a YouTube channel, gets nothing. It's rubbish. You know, the Conservatives get nowhere. So Reform UK are winning in terms of legacy media. They're winning in terms of broadcast media. They're winning in terms of social media. Give them £80 million. See, they've already know what they're doing. Give them £80 million, they're going to do way better. And the thing is as well, Reform UK are already trying to say that the establishment's trying to keep... I mean, they are the establishment, but they're already trying to say that the establishment are keeping them down. But if you give them tens of millions of pounds, they'll be able to say it with targeted ads as well. Frankly, I'm hoping that behind the scenes, Labour are actually confident that Musk isn't going to donate this money. He hasn't said he will. It's just like hints and, and probably, that would explain why they're so blasé about the urgency. If they're because they're talking to like Trump's people behind the scenes, if they don't really think he's going to do it. Because the alternative is that they are running scared of Reform UK. But just how much of a threat are Reform to Labour? They're a bit of a threat. It's not beyond possibility that they could actually take some Labour seats next time. Reform get by far and away the most airtime of any party outside the big two. And as I've already said, they're way ahead of Labour and the Conservatives or any other party on social media. And so they're naturally going to gather the most disaffected votes. When you've got voters who are going, well, neither the Conservatives nor Labour have got my back. Reform UK are the obvious third party to go for, because the other ones are basically invisible. Lewis Goodall is advertising his pre-Christmas show, and it's got on it 4 guests. One of them seems to be apolitical. One of them is a Labour minister. 2 of them are Conservative MPs. Oh no, one is a former Conservative MP, but 2 of them are Conservatives. And it's like 2 Conservatives out of 4 guests. Could you not invite someone from the Lib Dems or the Green Party? Oh, no, of course not. The Lib Dems and the Green Party don't exist between elections. That's right. So Reform UK are naturally going to gather those disaffected votes. Now, when the Conservatives are dead and buried and Labour are carrying out some unpopular policies, and some of these policies are necessary. Others, I think, were a little bit reckless for little to no reward. But the bottom line is there are people who don't think either Labour or the Tories are the answer to their problems. So Reform UK is happily gathering them up. However, Labour are confident that their policies will yield fruit and that they will win back that support later in the Parliament. The problem is, it seems a bit unnecessary to be too confident about that. I think they're going to be making some significant strides. Yes, does it necessarily get all of those support back? Only if people think that not only is this definitely better than it was under the Tories, but that it's not worth voting Reform UK, because they will promise better still, right? Also, Labour, I suppose, on their side, the policy of giving 16 and 17-year-olds the vote, that will also help. And people go, aren't Reform UK doing well amongst young voters? It's like they're gaining, but it's nowhere near at the level of Labour's appeal. That being said, Labour should not just be aiming at 2028 or 2029 either. Whenever the next general election is, because I feel that that's the case. They're focusing on the next general election, but it's like, but local elections matter as well. I mean, they matter in the traditional sense in that huge losses will start to build a narrative of the government being unpopular. This is, and I said it enough in the last Parliament, people are sheeple, right? So there's a lot of people, if they think that others in their community don't like a particular party, the party of government, then sometimes they change their vote just based on that perception of what everyone else is going to do. So you don't want to allow a narrative to be built that makes it look like Labour are crashing in popularity, which heavy losses in a local election will do. Also, the National Party needs councillors to organise their ground support for the general election, even if they don't care about the local elections. They care about the general election and they need those councillors to help there. But there's an extra dimension now. Labour are pushing ahead with devolved decision makings. This is way more likely to work in the way Labour wants it to work if it's mostly Labour authorities making those decisions. See, it's really helpful that almost all of the Metro mayors are Labour, so that's going to be initially quite useful. But if you lose a load of councils and those decisions go tits up, but the national government's still being blamed, then there's the Welsh and Scottish elections in 2026. Like, Labour's support has really crashed in both those places of late. And they must think of themselves as having a year to put that right, not 4 years. That being said, I also think there's a risk of losing support to Reform UK by acting out of fear. And this may be happening at all levels. At the top level, this failure to deal quickly with the very urgent threat of a lot of foreign money flooding our system, that sounds like it's born of fear for how Reform would spin it, according to these quotes in The Observer. If that's the case, that is not rational thinking. But also the case at the other end, like faced with Labour's sudden unpopularity, local councillors and local activists are worried ahead of local elections. I've had someone emailing me about concerns. And the instinct in that situation can be to go on the defensive, to apologise. Oh, yeah, well, we are a local party. We don't agree with these policies, and try and distance yourself from the National Party. It's fatal. Doesn't work. It didn't work for Labour MPs in 2019. Didn't work for Conservative councillors over the past few years. What local activists should be doing is recognising that although Labour have adopted a few probably unwise policies, most of the anger is orchestrated by a hostile media. Like, emphasise the popular things that Labour have done that people may not be aware about because they're not going to read about it in the media. You know, boosted public sector pay above inflation, boosted the minimum wage above inflation, massively increased the funding to tackle homelessness, giving local authorities the ability to manage local services, including transport services, better, that will be able to bring those into public hands. Massive house building programme with money for a big boost in affordable and social housing. There's lots of stuff Labour have done and are doing which isn't being reported on. Labour mostly messed up in not hyping their moves enough. It's not that their moves have been wrong. There's like been a couple, but it's not that their moves have been wrong. They just haven't been talking about it enough and haven't been getting that message through to the public. You know, focusing too much on the knackered state of the country. That, yes, okay, they didn't want to overpromise, but their line was just too depressing. Remember, Labour's popularity actually went up after the election. Went up. Because they were making announcements that like, oh, this is looking good. The focus was on good outcomes. Then the riots derailed them a bit, and then they switched to doom and gloom statements in the long lead up to the budget. Recent analysis of the latest polling shows Labour losing more support amongst certain groups, not as much amongst others, right? Reform UK are just gaining support pretty much equally amongst all groups. And the reason for that is it's not targeted. Reform do all their campaigning via the national media, who keep unfairly platforming them. The evidence is that Reform here are not targeting particular groups of voter, either because they can't or because they won't. But in a first past the post system, you have to be able to. Labour are capable of targeting key groups. They did in the last Parliament. They can do so again. But whatever votes they might lose to Reform are not going to be as impactful as they could be because of Reform's scattergun approach. But you give them £80 million to spend on top of all the other donations they're going to elicit as well, because this is just one source of donation. And that will allow them to get top campaign strategists, polling, data analysts, targeted advertising. And we may well find that Reform actually do start to sharpen up its campaigning. That's when we'll be in trouble. And if Musk does donate this money in the next year or so, and Labour tighten up the laws a year after that, it may well be the most ridiculous case of locking the stable door after the horse has bolted I have ever seen. Right now, Reform UK are not a professional outfit. The media are doing all their heavy lifting for them. You know, we know that when Nigel Farage faces any scrutiny, falls to pieces, as do the others. It's the media that are promoting Reform UK, not Reform UK themselves. I think it is risky in the extreme to give them the opportunity to professionalise, just because you think they might throw a hissy fit if you stop them. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.